Thank you. I'm sure you were in jest. It was not an impressive lecture. It was just a series of notes. The point is this. I was struck by, in reading recently, a short volume which you have a paper in, which is Still So Much to Be Done, which is a collection of, in homage to Denis Diderot and the notion of the culture at the heart of Europe. What struck me about that collection was the number of contradictions between different contributors to that volume. And in particular, although it is mentioned at one point in the excellent essay by the French woman whose name slips me at the moment, who it's son, Autissier, thank you. By, the excellent essay by Autissier, which doesn't fail to mention the fact that cultural diplomacy, very much on the American model, had been funded by the CIA in order to activate the notion of culture as democratizing. Or the fact that Denis Diderot could not understand and had a critique of both Sartre and Fanon when the two of them happened to mention the notion of the restitution of cultural spoils, because for him, Europe is universality, and therefore the place where those cultural artifacts can achieve their universality is by being in Europe. This is alluded to, but it doesn't actually do any work for the volume. And yet this volume, as you know, the foundation which published it placed it on the desks, as they themselves say, of every cultural broker in all the European countries, in all the governments and all the diplomatic points and so on. This is a volume that is intended to shape policy and thinking about the question of culture in Europe. And then in the contributions by José Manuel Barroso, we have the usual notions about culture as a heritage that we must draw on. And then in the contribution by Pinkston, the anthropologist who is thinking about the question of multiculturalism, multiculturalism is ruled out precisely on the two aspects that can be problematic for a Western discourse. The Western discourse must be a secularist cultural discourse. And precisely the two things that must be written out is culture and faith in terms of minorities. And then the way that this volume, addressing as it does, there's still so much to be done, entirely ignores the issues of the name colonialism, which figures absolutely nowhere, and yet is constitutive of Western history and of European history in particular, of its legacy, of its heritage, of its sense of self, and of its identity. I thought it was important to bring that in, that one side, and the second side, the particular relation that exists between the diversity of the cultures that make up Europe in terms of its ethnic minorities and the representation of Europe's perceptions of Europe to the outside. Now, if there is one image that I think must be universal to the outside, so we heard this morning that Europe is liberty. If you look at it from the outside, and I hope my pictures showed, Europe is actually holding centers. Europe is actually places that have an interstitial space, which is neither inside nor outside, which is the holding centers for migrants, refugees, and asylum seekers. There is a third space, and it doesn't get mentioned anywhere.